Yeah, so I'll get started. Welcome everyone who's joined us today. And thank you very much, Shanae and Laura from JustCo, who are hosting us. So my name's Christy Whitehill, and I'm one of the co-founders of Mind High Club. And yeah, we're really in this unprecedented time right now in history. I'm sure you'd all agree that it's all a bit crazy, and right now everyone's really feeling the stress of everything that's going on, not just from our businesses, but also in our personal lives, and also the whole economy. And we're feeling that effect from ourselves through to our friends, our family, etc. And it's a very worrying time, so it's no wonder that we're all thinking about our health and our mindsets and what we can do in this time to really help maintain a healthy body, a healthy mind, because really that's the thing that we've got control over. So for those of you who don't know what Mind High Club is, so we're a personal growth and wellbeing platform, and we connect people with transformation coaches, wellbeing experts, and spiritual teachers. And we also have a like-minded community. So we currently offer a range of different services to support you with personal transformation as well as your well-being. We have an online marketplace where you can connect with one-on-one with experts. So we've got 3 of our experts here today. And also we run meditation courses, and also have a Facebook community which you can join via Facebook as well. So I definitely encourage you to do that. So today, really we wanted to connect with you all just to have a chat about how we can really support our mindset and well-being, and what can we do to manage the stress. And really that's what we've got control over. So we've got 3 wonderful experts who we're going to have just a really open conversation with. We're going to have time at the end of the discussion to open up for Q&A. So definitely write down some questions. If you would like to ask at the end, we'll definitely open that up. So the 3 experts we've got is Cassie Cameron. She's a Psych K facilitator and meditation teacher, and she's also the co-founder of Mind High Club. We've got Shelley Laslett, who's a neuroscience coach, and she's the CEO and co-founder of Vitae Coach, and Emma Taylor, who is a naturopath and nutritionist. So why don't I just start with each of our experts, maybe starting with Cassie, just to do a quick intro about what you do, maybe in 30 seconds. And yeah, we'll start there.
Perfect. Thank you, Christy. And so good to see all of you guys here. So as Christy said, I'm the other half of Mind High Club, and very, very passionate about, now educating people on as many things as we can to help with mindset and well-being. So as Christy also said, I'm a certified meditation teacher, and I run courses regularly through Mind High Club where we teach people really easy and effortless and really profound technique. And I also facilitate Psych K, which is just a really powerful, simple and effective tool to release stress and limiting beliefs from the subconscious mind. So that's me in a really small nutshell, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you. So Shelley, we'll have you next.
No worries. Thank you, Christy, and thank you, Cassie, for making it happen. Thank you also to JustCo for inviting me to be along here today, and everyone for giving up their time. I know, as Christy said, it's a really crazy time, and it really is unprecedented. But I think one of the positive things is we are all making the time to look after ourselves, which kind of is that old saying, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. This is a really big reminder of that. So I am the co-founder, of Vitae, and what we do at Vitae is take neuroscience out of the lab and into life. I'm a neuroscience coach, a social scientist, and a postgraduate neuroscientist, which is a long word to basically say I'm obsessed with the brains and all the little cells that go on and what they do up there. And what we really do as Vitae is translate a lot of that scientific jargon scientists generally write and speak for other scientists. And we use some of that information to help you unlock the most powerful asset you own that actually controls everything in your life, and that's your brain. So we really bring some of that science out of what would normally be hidden in amongst lots of academic journals that are pretty painful to read, if I'm honest, and digest that into really practical applications, tools and frameworks of what we call neurohacks, neuroscience-based hacks that you can use in the moment on the fly, because most of us are really busy. But the fundamental element of us understanding our mind shouldn't be limited to those who are only in the science community. And that's what we really do. We're also part of Mind High. We're one of the experts there. I should probably say that. That makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Shelley. Emma.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here and be on a panel with 3 other amazing women. So I am a naturopath and a clinical nutritionist and a certified fertility awareness educator. So I will delve into what a naturopath actually is for those of you who haven't ever seen a naturopath. But basically, I look and treat health holistically. So I'm excited to delve into these questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we'll get straight into it. So maybe I'll start with you, Shelley. You know, really stressful time right now. What impact does stress have on the brain?
Wowzers. Okay, I could write a thesis on that. Okay, so just quick show of hands on the call for those who have their cameras on. Who's experienced stress in their life before? Okay, so I should see every hand up because it's a really natural, normal human response. All right, cool. So I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible. What we need to remember is stress is a really complicated hormonal response. So an endocrine response, it's a combination of things. You don't just have one stress hormone, but we might have heard of cortisol. We heard of cortisol. Maybe we've heard of adrenaline, which is made up of norepinephrine and epinephrine. The good thing about humans and stress is that we have to understand that to get resilience and to experience success, we actually do have to go through a little bit of adversity, and that goes hand in hand with stress. So when we measure resilience in a clinical setting, we have to induce stress. We can't actually measure resilience and demonstrate people's ability to adapt and overcome without inducing some form of stress. Now, this isn't terrible stress. It's all clinically approved, and we don't do anything nasty to people without their permission, because that would be odd. But it's really important to know with stress that you have 2 different types. You have acute and chronic. Has anyone heard of these before? Maybe a quick show of hands. Yeah, a couple of nods. Okay. Now, the great things about humans is that it's not as if we feel a little bit of stress and then we go straight into chronic. Acute is our focus and concentration. It's adrenaline, it's excitement. It keeps us focused on the task at hand. But it's a really delicate line between helping us to be productive, shut down creative insights that are going to distract us so we can complete what we have to do. And I'm so overwhelmed now that I can't focus. Does that make sense, everyone? So stress, acute stress, is really context dependent. That's really important for us to understand, that stress by nature isn't good or bad, it just is. It's a natural part of being human. And we don't need to hate stress because it's actually part of us responding in a really positive way to something that might be adverse. So what's really important to know about acute stress is if we can manage the stress that we feel, what we call in the moment, it doesn't necessarily trip into chronic stress. Now, chronic stress is that, you know, day in, day out life stress. It's the white noise that's always in the background, that constant worry and strain that we can't seem to let go of. So it stops us from being in the moment. It can stop us from experiencing joy. And it has a myriad of complications to the brain. So there's heaps of complications to the body. But if I quickly just touch on some of the issues of chronic stress with the brain, you've got brain inflammation, you've got a reduction in cognitive performance, a reduction in synapses, which is where neurons come together and connect. And your whole brain is made up of neuron connections, which is supported by tiny little cells called glial cells. Neurons only make up 10% of the brain cells, 90% are glia. Has anyone heard of the blood-brain barrier before? Okay, cool. So we have what's called microglia, a glial cell that protects the brain and the central nervous system. You actually have an independent immunity of the central nervous system, the spinal cord and the brain, away from the body. Stress really impacts the efficacy of that barrier, which stops nasty things getting into our central nervous system. And stress also impacts our ability to birth new neurons, a process called neurogenesis. The average human would birth new neurons about 700 a day. Stress can really reduce that, which has massive impact on our ability to regulate not only our central nervous system, but the rest of our body, our peripheral nervous system. So what's really important to take away from this, because that's a lot of information, again, stress is a massive topic, is that what we do, how we frame stress, how we view our stress, actually determines whether it's a fuel for positivity and productivity, or whether or not it becomes a fuel for destruction and paranoia. Does that make sense to everyone? So stress itself isn't necessarily bad. That comes from the forefather of stress, a guy called Hans Selye, Canadian endocrinologist, who first termed stressed out in 1836. What we know psychologically and neurologically is if we can view stress as a positive fuel that's going to allow us to be productive, motivated, focused, and on task, we don't get the adverse effects on the brain that I've just mentioned. That's probably enough there because we need to go move to some other questions.
No, that's great. Really great overview. Thanks, Shelley. And I think leading off that, and maybe this is the question, I mean, starting with you, and then maybe for all of our experts, for Emma and Cassie, you know, the coronavirus, this is all affecting everybody right now. So everybody's going to have some level of anxiety and stress. What are some practical tips? Maybe like 1 or 2 practical tips that you suggest that people can do at home right now to be able to help manage that. Maybe start with, maybe Shell, do you have any couple of, start with you?
We can do that. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to break open a bit of a myth. Okay, I'm going to tell you the most impactful thing you can do to boost your immune system. Even that statement is a bit iffy in the medical world, but I'm going to tell you, let you in a little secret of what we all agree on. Get a good night's sleep. Actually, that simple. 8 hours, 8+ hours. Humans, particularly adults, need anywhere between 8 to 10 hours to have really good cognitive and therefore bodily performance. We think that when we're asleep, we do nothing, and that's so far from the truth. We know that the brain can be more active when asleep than when doing something sedentary like watching TV or scrolling through Instagram. And we measure that through REM, rapid eye movement. We don't know a lot about what happens during the process of sleep. Please don't ask me anything about dreams. We literally have no idea. But what's really important is we know that when we are sleep deprived, we have compromised brain immunity and body immunity. So one of the things we can do to naturally decrease our anxiety is get a really good night's sleep. The second thing we can do, and I'm not going to touch on meditation because Cassie can nail that far better than I can, is ensure that we're moving. Now, we don't have to start some crazy home gym workout. We don't need to go buy all kettlebells. Good luck if you can find any, to be honest. But we do need to move our bodies. When we naturally move, we increase oxygen. We have a lot of hormones that release, which can create an elevated state. So we've got dopamine, which is part of it. We've got a little bit of oxytocin and serotonin. If we're doing something in terms of online group exercise, that will go up as well. And these all naturally combat cortisol and can use adrenaline positively. So simply moving for 30 minutes a day, however you want to do that, taking the dog for a walk, signing up and doing an online class. If you want to see Chris Hemsworth change you, there's free centre applications for the next 6 weeks. And getting a good night's sleep overall are really going to help with stress and anxiety levels.
Cool, thanks, Shelley. Maybe Cassie, go with you next.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Shelley in terms of, you know, for me, first of all, this is about getting back to basics. You know, a lot of us out there, when it comes to health and everything, we look for, say, the new thing or the magic pill, but a lot of it relies on the basic hygiene, you know, stuff, sleep, eating well, but of course Emma's going to talk all about that. And the mindset stuff's also important, you know, so watching what you're listening to and reading and watching and believing, most importantly, about what's going on, because, you know, our perception of the events is what's going to shape our experience and reaction to them. So I think if you do one thing other than meditation, it would be that. And of course, you already know I'm going to say this, a very practical, very simple and very effective tool, which has been validated by many studies now, which Shelley touched on and actually presented a beautiful talk about recently, the neuroscience of meditation. It's a very profound way to reduce stress and anxiety and increase your energy, improve your sleep and your mood. So that's a lot of benefits by doing something seemingly simple, sitting there and closing your eyes. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, we'll touch on a bit later in the Q&A as well, how to actually go about that and get into it, because if you're new to meditation, it can be a minefield. But it is a very profound and effective way to be able to do this. And it's something that you can do anywhere at any time, and all you need to do is close your eyes. So I would say if you did one thing, it would be definitely get into it now while we have the time and space, and just give that gift to yourself to really give it a go, and you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, and that's really great, Cassie. I think I'll get you to delve into that a little bit more after Emma. But yeah, it's super important. I find I get so many more benefits when I'm meditating. It's amazing right now for managing that stress and anxiety. Emma, would love to hear from you. What's your
love those tips, Cassie and Shelley. They're so important. They're on my list as well, always. I think the simple tips right now are the most effective because most of us are stuck home. So if there's two things that I would really suggest that are going to be really helpful in reducing worry and anxiety is one, cutting back on caffeine. So often we are quite reliant on it, and there comes a bit of a habitual habit each morning, waking up, going for your coffee. But if you're doing that first thing, it's going to be pumping out our stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, which Shelley wonderfully spoke about before. And that's going to just set us up for feeling anxious and feeling out of sorts from the get-go. So instead, I would suggest swapping out your caffeine or morning coffee to maybe a dandelion root tea, which is really tasty and it tastes like coffee. Or even a calming herbal tea such as chamomile or passion flower or lavender. And they're just going to really support the nervous system and calm you down.
Yeah.
My second tip, which Cass briefly touched on, but would be to create a really nice morning ritual, which encompasses everything that Cass and Shelley spoke about. But one really important tip, I believe, is to not check your phone for the first hour upon waking. So creating phone boundaries is really important because we're waking up, you're first of all checking the news, you're having a coffee, it's just a recipe for disaster and anxiety. So if you can create phone boundaries, I often say at least 1 hour upon waking, we check your phone, and 1 hour before bed, because the blue lights interfere with our melatonin production as well and impact the way we sleep and our REM cycle. So phone boundaries and caffeine, just focus on those two.
Yeah, no, awesome tips. Thank you, Emma. I'm actually a huge fan of the dandelion tea.
That's so
during my last pregnancy, I had to give up the caffeine, and it was just such a lifesaver. It felt like I was having coffee. So definitely recommend that one too.
Amazing.
Okay, well, we'll stick with you, Emma. Want to dig a little bit deeper into what you do. What is a naturopath? What kind of services do you offer? Why would someone come and see you? And how can that benefit right now?
Yeah, and I have to apologize, which is really ironic. I have a cough, so apologies if I sound a little croaky. So naturopaths seek to find and treat the root cause of imbalances in the body. So this basically means we don't treat symptomatically. Rather, we seek to understand why you're experiencing a symptom in the first place and what actually is driving that from a root level. So once we understand this, we gently help support your body back into balance holistically, meaning with nutrition, with exercise, with stress reduction techniques, and evidence-based herbal and supplemental medicine where necessary. Because as a naturopath, I really believe that when you give your body the right nourishment, it can heal and it can come back into its most vibrant health. So I specialize in women's hormones and reproductive health. So I see a lot of women with hormonal imbalances such as PCOS or endometriosis, irregular or heavy periods or PMS, women who are wanting to fall pregnant, so a lot of preconception care, or women who are experiencing difficulty falling pregnant. I see women throughout pregnancy and support them because, as you know, most probably that little baby will seep everything from you. So there's a lot. It's really important to support yourself throughout pregnancy, and then postpartum support as well. I see men and women for skin conditions, so eczema or acne, digestive complaints, so food intolerances, IBS, nervous system imbalances, so people experiencing anxiety or stress or depression, and then if someone has lowered immunity or an autoimmune condition. So it's quite broad with what I see, but it's different in a sense that I really look at people holistically. So we take into consideration everything they're doing in their life.
Yeah, awesome. What impact does the food we eat have on our immune system and also on stress and anxiety as well?
Well, it plays a huge role. And I've listed down some foods to support your immune system. But when we get down to basics, you know, food is our medicine. Food is the foundations of our health. We get all of the beautiful nutrients, vitamins, antioxidants that we require for every system in our body to function efficiently from our food. So it plays a huge role. And of course, if we're having, you know, lots of caffeine or lots of processed foods, then we're not acquiring the right nutrition we need for a calm nervous system, for a strong immune system, and for everything else in our body. And of course, all the systems work together. So it's just a slow burn. We need vitamins, we need nutrients to function and feel our best.
No, I completely agree. Cassie, I might go to you next, just to chat a bit more about meditation. What do you suggest people do if, say, they're a beginner and wanting to get into meditation? What techniques do you suggest?
Yeah, thanks, Christy. So for those of you that are new to meditation or perhaps have tried it but you're a beginner, there are a few different options for you. So there are a lot of good apps out there where you can really introduce yourself to the different techniques and get a feel for, you know, on an introductory level how it works. So some of my favorites include Headspace and Insight Timer, and also Waking Up by Sam Harris. They're a very good introduction. But I would say that across the board, you know, the vast majority of the time people comment that it's very difficult for their mind to shut off, and they have racing thoughts, can't stop thinking. There's a lot of stress out there at the moment, and they're not quite sure if they're doing it right. So if this is you, you're absolutely not alone, and it has absolutely nothing to do with your capacity to meditate whatsoever. It just may have been that you haven't yet found the right technique for you that resonates with you and learnt with it the right teacher. So the technique that I teach, which is very, very, very good and suitable for beginners because it is extremely effortless, easy, and very profound and effective in releasing stress. Technique I teach is a being technique, which means it goes beyond the mind, and there's no need to try and stop thinking or any of that stuff. And I can absolutely guarantee that even the people that think, I really can't meditate, no, but I can't meditate, those people successfully learn the technique and they're very, very pleased with the ability to carry it out. So that's what I would suggest. That's the technique that's transformed my own life and relieved years of stress and anxiety, and really I can speak to the profound benefits. But in saying that, you know, I would say play around with the apps, get a feel for it. Run High Club, we also run twice a week free online group meditations where you can just show up and we all meditate together, and you can get a feel for our vibe and connect with the community as a good introduction. Or also I do free discovery calls where you can just book in a call and I can answer any of the questions you may have about meditation. No obligation to join the course or anything, but just to answer any questions because I've been in the space so long. So those are kind of my tips for getting involved, and just always Q&A on this call or reach out, and always happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, awesome. And what about some of the myths and like about meditation and objections people might have? You know, because I know a lot comes up. I know personally getting into meditation, it was like, you know, like, I don't have the time. I can't do this. And, you know, I find that after meditating twice a day, like the compounding effect of it is just amazing. But yeah, what's your experience?
Absolutely, and you hit it right on the head with the first one. One of the most common ones is not believing that we have time to meditate, and that is actually something we dedicate a whole session to in the course that I teach, because it's a very common problem, and there's definitely strategies and tools that will enable you to definitely do that. In saying that, we do have a bit more time and space in some way at the moment. We're at home, so now is actually a great time. So actually the most common myths that I come across are, number one, being that meditation is difficult and that meditation isn't accessible and achievable by everyone, which is absolutely not true. So meditation does not have to be difficult, and it doesn't have to be hard, and you are not bad at meditation if you think you are. It's just finding the right technique, being taught the right technique, and carrying it out. That's it. So it can absolutely be easy and effortless, and you can do it, is what I would say. I've heard a lot of people believe that they just aren't meditators, but it's just completely untrue. So I want to put your fears at rest here, guys. It's not true. And the second one is that meditation requires you to clear your mind and to stop your thoughts. And this is also untrue. So the mind is a thinking machine. And if I told you right now not to think of a pink elephant, well, I actually think I've heard you say that before, Shelley. You're probably going to think of a pink elephant. So meditation and all its forms and techniques is 99% of the time never about pushing away your thoughts. You don't ever need to resist thoughts and clear the mind. It's more about developing a different relationship to your thoughts and training and evolving your mind and your awareness to a state where you can relate to them with more of a degree of indifference in some way. And establish yourself as the witness where you're simply the experiencer of your thoughts, which is a really nice feeling, isn't it? Yeah. You're not to believe and experience life as being your thoughts and being that voice in your head. So that's what meditation seeks to cultivate. And especially in the technique I teach, thoughts are welcome and a very important part of the process, and you will not be disturbed by the thoughts. So that's probably really comforting, because before I learned to meditate, I don't know who said this, but sit there and clear your mind. That's not what we do at all. That is a very common, widespread myth, and I'm really happy if you thought that before and now don't. That's my job done today. And yeah, the last one is the myth that if you meditate, you need to then subscribe to a particular lifestyle or other different things and ways of being and philosophies and doctrines. That's also untrue. Meditation is created as a universal tool, and absolutely everybody has the ability and the right to meditate, and you don't need to follow any particular way of thinking or ideology. It's for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Shelley, maybe do you want to back that up with some science? We'd love to hear, a bit about the science of meditation.
Sure. So just a quick show of hands, who's actually aware of meditation? Who's maybe got a practice? They're like maybe they dabble, got a mind app they've maybe used. A couple of people might be thinking, some of those myths that Cassie's just talked about. I think she summed up some of the big ones really well. It's really important to understand kind of how meditation got into clinical practice, but I just want to be really clear with everyone that meditation is a clinical practice. It's what we call third wave psychotherapy in psychology, and it's used in the same way that cognitive behavior therapy is. Has anyone heard of CBT before, cognitive behavior therapy? Most psychologists use that method, or they use an adaptation of that method, which was invented by Beck in the 1970s. We have MBCBT, mindful-based cognitive behavior therapy, and it was brought out of the ancient teachings originally of Buddhism into Hinduism and adapted into a clinical setting. So a gentleman called John Kabat-Zinn really drove that transformation. And what it basically does, in the same way that cognitive behavior therapy does, is addresses what we call cognitive appraisals. Has anyone heard of cognitive appraisals before? Maybe a couple of people. Anyone that's done any form of psychology, you would know what we were referring to. All cognitive appraisals are the filter or the lens in which we view our own internal thinking and our external world. And sometimes those appraisals become maladaptive. So when people experience anxiety, depression, or any form of mental illness, even mildly, what we say is there's a maladaptive cognitive appraisal. Now, here's the awesome part about your mind. You can change those appraisals at any given moment based on the fact that the mind is plastic. Has anyone heard about neuroplasticity before? A couple of people? Okay, all that means is that your brain is plastic. It's adaptable and can be remodeled and rewired in relation to experiences throughout your lifetime. Now, it's really important to know that your brain is plastic until you die, until your final moment. And even those who have neurodegeneration, disease and disorder within the central nervous system still have a plastic brain. So we're capable of change at any given time. Look how quickly we've changed as a world into how we work. Now, if you had said to a major bank, we're working with one of them at the moment, they have 25,000 staff, that, come March 29th, you're all going to be working from home, nearly everyone in that bank would have laughed at you, right? But they've all done it. So change is always possible. What mindfulness does is allows you to target that cognitive appraisal through simply practicing the underpinning lessons and theories about accepting your mind, about awareness, attention, emotion, control, and compassion, which all lead to action. And the action is adjusting the way that we view the world and we view our own internal thought process. Now, this is used clinically, and it's used in direct treatment to treat depression, generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress syndrome, trauma and addiction. It's used in pain management, in really a lot of areas of mental health. But what we know is not only impacts on the brain, but the impacts on clinical or therapeutic outcomes for people who are experiencing another disease or treatment. So we know that it increases or has an improved prognosis for cancer patients. We know that it has improved prognosis for those with clinical and chronic pain. We know that we have improved immunity of the body and the brain. And we also know that it's effective at stress management. It has an equal efficacy for some antidepressants for depression and some anti-anxiety medication. So efficacy means the same. You're going to get as good, if not better, outcome, maybe if you practice mindfulness-based cognitive therapy or you took a pill. Now, each brain is different, so I can't clinically say for every single person on the planet this is going to work better. But what we need to understand is there is scientific evidence that demonstrates this is a clinical practice which is used in the same way that, you know, a vaccine is a clinical practice and a administration of antidepressants is a clinical practice. I think overall we need to demonstrate that you don't have to be sick for mindfulness to be effective either, and you don't have to be unwell. So if we think about what it does overall, we actually see some quite structural changes to the brain. So the three things that are probably strongest conclusively what we see in people all over, so not people that are necessarily unwell, physically sick or suffering from mental illness, is we have better attention control. We're better at understanding our own thoughts, unpacking them using something called metacognition, thinking about thinking. And we're better at paying attention to positive stimuli and reducing the effect that negative and anxious stimuli can have on us. We have better self-awareness, the more understanding of ourselves and others, and we're better at regulating our emotions. We become much more in control of the way we behave, both within our own mind, the voice that we use to ourselves, and the voice that we use with others. We see an increase in pro-social behaviour, and we have a decrease overall in any form of anxiety, worry, and fear. So that's a lot. I'm going to stop there because that's actually only a couple of areas, but we know that those three things happen because we can see structural changes in the brain. So we use fMRI to measure what's called BOLD, so the blood oxygenated level dependent. We're looking at the changes in blood flow in the brain, and what we can see in meditators' brains who are consistent is a change in that blood flow, the change in the areas of the brain that light up. And actually that through practicing meditation, we cause some very, very real neuroplastic positive changes to our brain. That's probably enough science to bore everyone to tears for now though.
No, that's awesome. Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, so like, you know, what you're saying, it's really important right now, even prior to coming, you know, with being faced with adversity and challenges, to be practicing mindfulness on a regular basis, and some of these techniques that you're all suggesting, it's really helpful. So thank you. Now I'm just going to ask maybe Cassie and Emma one more question, and then we might open up to Q&A, because I know some of you might have some burning questions, and I'll make sure we have enough time for you all to get your questions in. So Emma, we didn't get those tips from you before. I'd love to hear some of the foods that we should be eating right now. I think that's really important.
Absolutely, 100%. So basically making sure you're eating an array of colourful fruits and vegetables, and if you can, opting for organic, because there are a lot higher levels of nutrients, we know that, and vitamins in those organic foods because they're not being sprayed with pesticides. Garlic should be in your home medicine kit. So the active constituent in garlic is allicin, and allicin is a powerful antimicrobial, antiviral, and antifungal. So chopping that up, popping it in not smoothies, definitely not smoothies.
Garlic smoothie, yum.
Soups and broths and stews, wherever you can chop it up and actually swallow it whole, maybe chasing it with don't chew it, just swallow it whole, chase it with some water, and you're going to have those powerful healing properties from garlic. Bone broth is excellent. It is rich in minerals that have been shown to support the health and function of the digestive tract. And the digestive system is actually home to 70% of our immune cells. So it's very important to have a healthy functioning gut for a strong immune system. vitamin C rich foods. So these are Australian Kakadu plums, if you can get your hands on them. They are one of the highest sources of vitamin C in the world, which is quite amazing. Kiwi fruits, guavas, kale, broccoli. I mean, you can look these up. So anything rich in vitamin C, because vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant and immune booster. And we actually, as humans, don't make vitamin C. Sorry, I'm going to mute it because I have to cough. Sorry.
Kakadu plum.
Yes, I know. And don't worry, I'm taking all of these plus some supplements and herbs. Reishi mushroom or any medicinal mushrooms that you can get your hands on are amazing. So they've been celebrated for their immune strengthening and adaptogenic properties for thousands of years. And adaptogenic means helping you adapt to stress. So they're perfect for this, what we're dealing with right now. So you can eat medicinal mushrooms whole, popping them into photos or stews again, soups and broths, or you can find a powdered version and mix them into your favorite hot drink. Mine is a hot chocolate. So yeah, ginger and turmeric are also two excellent healing spices that you can have at home and really easily accessible.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Cassie, just one last question. So, you mentioned Psych K before. I've been doing some sessions with you. Amazing. Would love for you to just explain a little bit about what that is and what some of the key benefits are and yeah, really what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So most of you probably going, what the hell is Psych K? So Psych K is a really powerful and effective and simple tool which releases stress and limiting beliefs from your subconscious mind. And how it works is, well, first of all, it's based on years of brain dominance theory, neuroscience, energy psychology, and also uses muscle testing to access your subconscious and then just make some rapid change through simple, some insightful questions, simple postures and processes, which very, very, very powerful in releasing trapped and stuck stress and emotions which you've been hanging on to for a long, long time, and any way in which you're feeling sabotaged or blocked and you're not really creating your desired reality. So it's a weird and wonderful tool, and I've seen some profound benefits and shifts with people and myself. And there's a lot to sort of say about it. I know we're short on time, so if anyone's interested in learning more, again, you can just pop in a discovery call, ask questions, and reach out. But really good for managing stress. So we do what's called a stress transformation. We create a whole brain state where you can become a lot more neutral and release triggers and emotions and stress around specific situations.
Yeah, really important for right now. Okay, I might open it up to some Q&A, and this is really going to be interesting how we manage this. But I was just thinking, if someone's got a question, what I might do, just say me or something, and I'll just, whoever pops up on my screen first, I'll choose you. So who's got some questions? Anybody?
I have a question.
Hi, so this is Elle. This is what's come up on my... What's your name, sorry?
It's Lucian.
Lucian. Hi, how are you going?
Yeah, very well. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Excellent. I had a question around meditation, actually. And this is my own personal experience, so I'm very interested to ask. So for those people that, let's say, are introduced to meditation where you bring yourself back to your breathing, which is, as I understand, probably one of the most common meditation techniques, I personally found myself holding my breath. And I actually found the meditation itself narrowed my creativity and actually made me more rigid than I was before. I wondered whether you actually mentioned that when you introduce people to meditation, you talked to, I don't know if you actually mentioned the technique itself, but is there merit in doing nothing?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. So how we commonly are introduced to meditation for the first time is a purely, say, mindfulness-based technique which focuses on coming back to the breath. So which sounds like what you've been practicing, right? And all of the techniques have merit and benefit. And saying that, I can't emphasize enough a lot of the time the instruction from a certified teacher, because there are a lot of people out there throwing around meditation, and it's very, very simple, but there's a small fine line between perfect beneficial practice and kind of sort of doing it, not really. So to answer your question in two parts, the technique that I teach is called a being technique. And what this means is it's a transcendental practice. So instead of practicing, say, traditional mindfulness technique, this is a much, much older, more ancient technique, which actually goes beyond the mind. And you transcend all of that and move the mind and the body into a deep state of rest and stimulate the parasympathetic. So there's absolutely no effort required whatsoever, or any focus or any control in any way. So it's a very different technique to the one you described. And when you said, is there merit in doing nothing? Of course, you know, there's lots of different ways to achieve the same outcome. Because I teach this particular style of meditation, and based on my own experiences and the experiences of thousands of others and my students, and also the research of this particular technique, I really feel like it's a really, really good way to go, where you can experience a lot of profound change really quickly. But there's nothing wrong with simply being with yourself, being present, being in the moment. Essentially, that's what mindfulness is. And even though I'm teaching this specific technique, we have that experience, but the outcome and result is mindfulness, is a greater capacity to be more mindful. And that's what we're all seeking to do. But does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, no, it definitely does. I guess it goes back to what you were saying with a lot of apps out there telling you that there's a very particular way to do it, which I think creates a subconscious, I'm not doing this properly, and that kind of affects the practice. But it was a bit of a light bulb for me, because doing nothing is very therapeutic. And I mean more from a mindset perspective, but I was listening to a podcast from Naval, who's the founder of AngelList. And he said, you know, focusing on my breath actually takes the practice away, but by doing nothing and just being with myself for half an hour, I have profound rest. And that was very interesting for me, but seemed a bit almost too good to be true. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think we've been conditioned to think life is complicated, and we really need to overthink and strive and struggle. But in fact, well, first of all, there's different strokes for different folks, and there's different techniques that resonate with everyone. And if you feel the effects, our measure is efficacy. So if you're feeling the effect, beautiful. You know, if you're struggling and you're not, great, go and learn another technique. So I think that you're onto something. And in saying that, if you did want to take it deeper than that, I would really encourage you to try something out that does go beyond the mind and see how you feel about that.
Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the question.
Who's next? Sure, we've got questions. Jump in, somebody. Come on. Don't be shy. No? I have another question. So this could be for anyone of the experts. What can we be doing right now to feel confident about the future? Who wants to start? Maybe Shelley.
All right, I'm going to let you in on a little insight on neuroscience. Doing and imagining are the same to the brain. Did anyone know that? A couple of people? Put your hand up if you didn't know that. Okay. So we didn't used to believe that this was true, and the way that we discovered was using musicians and athletes. When we asked athletes and musicians to rehearse what they would do in a performance if you're a musician, and in a race or in a game situation as an athlete, we were able, and we being Alvaro Pascal-Leone, who was the neuroscientist that led this research in the mid-90s, to demonstrate using fMRI, so functional magnetic resonance imaging, which is where we look at the differences of blood flow and which brain areas light up. Through the use of that technique, we were able to demonstrate that when someone's lying in a scanner, imagining what they do at the start of a race if they're a 100-meter sprinter, their brain goes through the same process as if they were actually doing it. So Alvaro Pascal-Leone said, well, look, I reckon musicians can do this too. So what he asked to do was to novice piano players, people who had never touched or played the piano. He got one group, Group A, to practice a little arpeggio, a little scale, and learn it. He got Group B to simply imagine doing the scale without touching the ivory for the same period of time. At the end of 2 weeks, he tested both groups. Do you think that there was a difference between these groups, or do you think that they had the same playing capability? You're going to have to come off mute for this one, folk. Or I can ask you questions and you can raise your hands. Who thinks they had, like the people that actually played the piano had a better skill, played it better? Hands up if you think that's true. No. Everyone else doesn't have their camera on. So here's the deal. Exactly the same. So this is how powerful your mind can be when it comes to visualizing and meditating. When we visualize the reality we want to create, we're far more likely to invoke it. The brain seeks to answer the question it's been asked. If we look for data about how this is terrible, it's never going to end, I'm never going to survive this, I will find data to support that idea. If I look for data to suggest that actually I'm resilient, I can get through this, this will end, our world will go back to a relative normal. Perhaps this is an example for me to think more and reflect more on who I am and what I'm doing, because it's a reminder that we are not immortal. Life is a fragile gift, and what we do with it is incredibly important. If we look at that, then we'll create that reality. And to sort of just stick that into a little bit more of science, we all hallucinate reality. Every single person on the planet hallucinates reality. If you have a brain and you're human, you hallucinate reality. And this comes from Anil Seth, who's a researcher. He's a prominent neuroscientist in the space of consciousness. I want to be clear that there is no neurologically agreed state of consciousness. We still cannot tell you what that is. There's no universal understanding. But what he has demonstrated is we have top-down and bottom-up processing. What are we experiencing through the outside world that's actually in our surrounding? And what are our existing ideas, understanding, connections, memories at the bottom? And those two things merge together and form our reality. Except what generally happens is we guess in the middle. We take in a little bit of the external information and we fill the rest with our prior or existing connections and understanding of the space. Your brain is unique. No two brains on the planet are the same. So we can all be inhabitants of planet Earth, but there will be 6.8 billion different versions of what it means to live on planet Earth. So creating our reality is literally about designing the reality we want to make in our head, because we can build neurological connections in the same way simply by imagining as we do when we action and do and learn. Does that answer your question, Christy?
Yeah, no, it's really great, really helpful. Thank you. Anyone, I'll just pass over to anyone else that wants to ask a question. This is going to be your last chance. So if you need any advice, jump in. Definitely a good time to ask. No one?
Can people ask 2 questions?
Yes, you can.
Sorry, I'm back. I'd just be really interested to put this to the floor. So as you can probably tell, I take quite a keen interest in psychology, predominantly in startups and how important it is. But what I've found is that a lot of these tools are obviously extremely useful, but I think in a lot of cases, the tools themselves don't actually help people go a level above and actually redesign their relationship with the feeling. And to articulate that another way, I feel like people use meditation, CBT, all of these techniques, but ultimately it's more of a plaster as opposed to profound changes in the way that you kind of behave with your emotions and your feelings. Is there any merit in that? And I guess, how would you deepen your practice to stop using meditation as, let's say, a distraction from actually feelings that you really need to feel?
I think that's a really good one for Cassie, maybe to talk a little bit more about Psych K, because definitely, that's one of the tools that I've used that has helped, I guess, rewire and go back into some of those emotions and help work on that. So maybe Cassie, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting point of discussion. I think actually quite a big topic where there's been a lot of debate. So for this purpose of our limited time on this call, I'm not going to enter into a debate about that, but from sort of my years of training, my personal experience and that with others, meditation is the opposite of a Band-Aid. So it's absolutely fundamentally changing the way we relate to, process and continue along life in relation to our emotions, our experiences, our perception. And for the likes of Psych-K, shaping our perception is a way of changing the relationship with which we view the world and shapes our experiences. So I'm not quite sure whether I would personally agree that that statement has merit, but that's just me and my own experience with these techniques.
Do you mind if I just add, Cass, to that and a little bit of neuroscience colour? And Lucian, that might help put it into perspective.
Yeah.
Because to build on what you're saying, Cass, it's really up to the individual. What we need to understand about change is all change starts with choice. So if you choose to bank a choice, you're actually already 50% of the way there to change. But you can't get change without choice. So people can use tools, but if they fundamentally don't want to change them, it's not necessarily a reflection upon the tool, it's a reflection upon that individual's action or use of that tool. So CBT, for example, and I don't know how familiar you are with it, is actually the opposite of what you've just described. CBT is directly targeting through somatic questioning and cognitive restructuring by addressing hot thoughts. You can't hide in a CBT session. It's actually a lot of work, and this restructuring neurologically takes a lot of energy, which is why we often resist it. You have to remember, if doing and imagining are the same, if we go back into a painful memory and back into a painful feeling, we're going to feel all of that again. And for some people, that's too much, and that's actually okay. Everybody's up to where they're up to, and they're going to interpret from their unique view of the world, what they're able to comprehend at that time. Now, if you've sort of maybe taken a little bit further or gone a little bit further on that journey, it's going to be a bit obvious to perhaps maybe people aren't at the depth that others are. But it's really important throughout these practices with things like any psychotherapies, which include cognitive behavioural therapy and mindfulness meditation. The individual translation is the most important part. So what the individual gets from those sessions and how they choose to interpret it is really what's going to have the impact. So I would say generally, if we can resist the urge of looking at others and how they've used the tool or how they've interpreted it, and simply focus on our own practice and what works for us, that's probably going to have the most impact. And it's not necessarily to say that we shouldn't encourage others to go further if they want to. It's more that this universal understanding that we need to accept people for where they're up to, and with their permission, if they're willing, take them to where they want to be. And these tools are that journey for those who choose to go on it. But having delivered CBT and being receptive of it, it is not easy. So I can sit here and tell you all this stuff, my postgraduate neuroscience work. It doesn't mean it necessarily is any easier for me.
Yeah, and can I just jump in and say, Shelley, you absolutely nailed that. And a really, really important and key component about Psych-K and all these other tools is you. And these tools aren't the power, you are the power. So, you are the one making the change essentially. These tools are just one of the many hundreds of ways to achieve that change. So I could not agree more.
No, that's really great.
Perfect.
Did anyone else have anything else? We'll probably have to wrap up in a minute. Last chance.
I have one question.
Yeah, go for it.
We may have already sort of touched on it a little bit, but at the moment, from my colleagues, friends and family, I've just had a lot of people really worried and stressed and anxious about the unknown. So not even thinking about what the future looks like, but just accepting sort of the unknown. Does anyone have sort of any tips on how to deal with that?
Do you want me to take that, Christy? Or?
Yeah, sure.
So is it Laura?
Yes, yeah.
Laura, okay. Number one, the brain hates not knowing. That's really normal. We hate not knowing. I mentioned before bottom-up and top-down processing. That merging in the middle, where we kind of make up the middle, that's generally when we have an understanding schema or pattern recognition from before. We have a part of our brain called our orbital frontal cortex that is responsible, sits here within our prefrontal cortex, within our frontal lobe, just in case you needed an anatomy lesson after this. That's where that lives. And that guy is responsible for saying, have I seen this before? Can I deduce what kind of I think is going to happen? Awesome. And therefore, this is actually what my reality is. Now, we've never lived in this time before. Like maybe someone else has lived through a global pandemic. If you survived the Spanish flu, you would have to be very old and very incredible on the immune front. This is new and unknown. So what's really important here is to come back to what do we know? Okay, what can I control right now? And I can actually only control this moment. remember, if we imagine a situation, or, you know, I'd lose my job and then what about my mortgage? Suddenly we're like, you know, 5 days in the future worried about my mortgage repayment versus being in this moment right now. And the other thing to note is that, you know, emotions spread. We're actually really contagious with our emotions. We have a whole network of mimicry in our mind that mirrors others' behaviors. All social creatures do. We share this heavily with our primate cousins. But in terms of, okay, that's all great, but what do I do? Stay in the moment, Laura. And your advice to other people is to control what you can control, and that's your thought process. You cannot control anybody but yourself. You cannot control any external happenings, but you can control how you interpret them and how you appraise them. So yes, this is a bit average right now. It's a bit of a rubbish time for a lot of people. But what do I have? You know, I've got my health, I've got my family, I have relative savings, I live in a social welfare state where I'm protected, and if I need to go to hospital, I'm going to be safe. You know, I do have access to my super, even if I don't want to touch it. There's also this element that I'm hearing a lot about, oh, but I don't want to use my savings. Now, you know your own unique economic position. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not a financial advisor. But savings are for time of crisis. And I'm pretty sure a global pandemic classifies as crisis. So it's not comfortable. I get that. But we need to learn that the uncomfortability is part of the process. I said at the beginning, we can't have resilience and we can't have change without some of that adversity. So the most important thing for you, Laura, is to make sure that you're feeling okay, because a candle cannot give light unto itself. You can't support other people if you're not giving to you first. So making sure that you go through that process and then perhaps suggest what works for you to another, but knowing you're also not responsible for all those other people in your life. You can actually still sort of only take care of you first. As they say, put on your own oxygen mask first. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Shelley. Well, we're going to have to wrap up now. So thank you to Shelley, Cassie and Emma for your contribution today. Love chatting. I love this topic. And also thank you to JustCo, to Laura, Shanae. Like, really appreciate you letting us have this platform and to be able to speak to your community as well. And thank you everybody for showing up, because that's, you know, right now the time that you're giving to yourselves to learn about this, to learn about how you can really manage your stress, and really practice mindfulness in this time. It's so important. So really appreciate your time. We'll send out some information post this event. So if you do want to be able to book Shelley, Emma or Cassie for a session via Mind High Club, please do so. You'll get some amazing benefits. Also join our Facebook community too. We'd love to be able to chat with you there. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Yes, and
Thank you. Love
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you for moderating, and yeah, thank you everyone for coming. And a huge thank you to Cassie, Emma and Shelley as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Wearing all white shirts, team. I'm really glad.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
White shirt panel.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
we're blue.
Oh, we're blue.
We're blue and
Oh,
white.
We're white.
Around on Facebook. I've not nailed it. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye.
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 Thanks.